Alright, welcome back everybody to another Decktech with Low Life Plays. I know it's been a little bit, my computer was in the shop, had some work on it, and now we're back. So, getting us in, Ether Drift has been super fun. I've had a lot of fun with some of these decks, which is going to be some of the ones I'll be releasing here. So let's start things off with good old Ketramose. So Ketramose, if you don't know, he is one colorless, a white and a black, for a legendary creature god. He has Menace, Lifelink, Indestructible. He cannot attack or block unless there are 7 more cards in exile. Pretty easy for us. Whenever 1 or more cards are put into exile from your graveyard or the battlefield during your turn, draw a card and lose a life. So the wheel and deal plan for this list is to just exile cards in 1 of or 2 of instances and then just draw a bunch of cards until we can combo out. It's definitely an Orzhov. Probably control list would be the best way. I do really love this commander. He jumped out at me as just a removal tribal for me, is kind of what I liked about him, and just graveyard hate is so nice to have. So let's just jump into it. So we went over Ketramose. Let's just get into right away what are we exiling and how. So we've got Marrow Bone Gnar. So this one black, target creature or target player removes a card from his or her graveyard from the game, and then whenever you cast a black spell or play a black spell, you may untap Marrow Bone Gnar. So it can definitely get us some nice card draw there. Then we're going to go into Lion Sash. So this one is an artifact creature equipment cat. You can pay 1 white to exile target card from a graveyard. If it was a permanent, it gets a +1/+1 counter on Lion Sash. And then you can start buffing up Ketramose and getting a bunch of lifelink, commander damage in, because he's a menaced lifelink indestructible boy. So lots of dual purpose stuff there. Emperor of Bones. So this guy, at the beginning of combat on your turn, you can exile up to 1 target card from a graveyard, and then you can pay 2 and adapt 2. So then whenever 1 or more +1/+1 counters are put on Emperor of Bones, you can take one of the creatures that you exiled with Emperor, put it onto the battlefield with a finality counter on it, gains haste. There are lots of synergies here with some flicker. You know, there's cards that put stuff under our control, like return it under your control, or just to get rid of those types of finality counters. But also either way, even if you're not doing any of those synergies with like Agatha's Soul Cauldron and him, you can do some really cool stuff just by he exiles something every combat, and then the finality counter stuff also exiles, so you'll draw with Ketramose. Really good card there. Abyssal Harvester. This guy can really put your opponents into an interesting situation with Ketramose, because he allows you to just, I mean, he often isn't exiling on your turn, but he can. So that's kind of interesting, but the biggest thing here is that you can just start getting nightmares. And he helps just kind of close the gap, and just more targeted graveyard removal is nice. Graveyard Trespasser. I think just classic card here. I like it. This is a flex slot for sure. I just think it's nice. Just a ward, discard a card 3/3 that can become a 4/4 and it exiles target cards, gains you life, drains your opponents. Can be just interesting. And then the real key pieces for this list are going to be our artifact graveyard target hate pieces. Ghost Vacuum, amazing. I know it's up in price now, but it's definitely worth it to throw into the list. Because it's just 1, comes down easy, exiles target card, which is what we love to see, is targeting graveyard hate. And then it just has extra stuff on it, where you pay 6 and you can just bring back this whole board of any creatures you keep exiling. Really nice. Relic of Progenitus, very classic graveyard hate. You know, you can just exiles a card at whatever they choose, but it has a threat of just instantly you can, you know, pay 1 and just exile it, which is nice for us, but also just exile all graveyards. So it can turn Ketramose on in an instant. Pretty cool. Dino DNA, really fun card here. You know, we can start exiling creatures, which is really nice, and then just bringing them back as 6/6 dinosaurs. Agatha's. So this card is crazy. You know, definitely not necessary in the list, but is very powerful. Just because you can just exile stuff and start giving counters, giving abilities. It's just, I mean, Agatha's Soul Cauldron is a crazy card. And in Ketramose is where I decided to put mine. Unlicensed Hearse, I really like this guy just because it helps up our creature count and makes a big beater while also being able to exile 2 target cards from a single graveyard. So even more targeted graveyard hate, which is just awesome. Mimic Vat. So Mimic Vat's super fun in the way that whenever a non-token creature dies, you can exile that card. And then if you do, return each other card exiled with Mimic Vat to its owner's graveyard. So it can keep one thing in exile all the time, and then you can just start making tokens of it. So really flexible card here. Senu, Keen-Eyed Protector. So Assassin's Creed card here. Flying Vigilance, which is nice, you know, just a flying Vigi. But you can tap it and exile Senu, so trigger, and then you gain 2 life, which is nice, and you can scry. And then whenever a legendary creature, Ketramose, attacks and isn't blocked because he has Menace, if Senu is exiled, then you put it onto the battlefield attacking, which is just so useful. You can just keep hitting in for more damage, more damage, more damage, and just scrying, gaining some incremental life. Really good. Aerial Extortionist. Super annoying to deal with. You know, it is 5 mana, so definitely I think a flexible slot with Aerial Extortionist, but I think it's just super good. You know, when it enters or deals combat damage, you can bounce things essentially, but you put them in exile, which is really great for us. And then whenever they cast, it's extra card draw, so really, really good. And then our ramp plan is pretty small. I might adjust it. This is still a new list I've been messing around with. It's been doing pretty good, but, you know, it's still tweakable for sure. I'm just running Soul Ring, Decanter of Endless Water, and Solemn Simulacrum, because Sad Boy is just, I love any Flicker deck. I'm always throwing Sad Boy in there, because it always feels good to draw him, start flickering our Sad Robot, and just ramping a ton of mana, especially in Orzhov would be really nice. But I could definitely see trying to trim some fat here and put on some, like, Talismans and Signets and stuff, but that's just where I was at. I don't know. It's, maybe, I don't even have an Arcane Signet. That's wild. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's a really low-to-the-ground deck, so that's why I decided to go that way. Black Market Connections, just a super value piece. You know, if we need ramp, if we need card draw, if we need creatures, it's really everything we need. And we do have a little bit of incremental life gain, and our commander itself has lifelink, so we can often offset it pretty easily. Flicker targets, you know, some of the best ones in my opinion are the card draw guys, like Dog, you know, Wall of Omens, and our cat here. Really excellent creatures. You know, I always feel really safe when I have these in my hand. In the start of the game, just can extra draw me cards. I can start flickering them. Really, really good. And then you can draw cards off their ETB and then off of their Exile from the Flicker with Ketramose. It's just so much fun. Chittering Witch and Underworld Hermit are here for the same purpose. You know, they're here to flicker and then create large boards for us to block, and just, you know, they have additional synergies there too. Where this one, you can start sacking rats that you're making with Chittering Witch, or just other creatures in general, to just kill problem things that are bigger. You know, it's not really a huge issue for us, and then this one's really just in here straight up just to make a ton of tokens to fill our board while we start controlling stuff. Grey Merchant, one of our win cons. I think anywhere you put Grey Merchant, good old Gary, he is just going to be one of your win cons by default. And I mean, when you're an Orzhov Flicker, you can just get there a lot of times. If you draw him or have him somewhere, he can close gaps really easy, and then he's also a really big piece of life gain for us, which is nice. Same thing with Massacre Worm. Massacre Worm can just shut down those token players, because I mean, you can cast this and then flicker it like a few times and just wipe everything out. It can really set you ahead. Speaking of our flicker things, or how we're going to do it, Ephemerate, really, really excellent one here. You know, has rebound. It's only 1 white, pretty good. Cloud Shift is one of the ones where you exile target creature you control, and then you return that card to the battlefield under your control. One of those types of effects can help with those finality counters in unique scenarios, because it says, you know, something you control, and then return it under your control. Whereas Ephemerate, for example, says exile target creature you control, and then return to the battlefield under its owner's control. So there's a little bit of interesting interaction with those. Parting Gust, it's removal when you need it, and Flicker when you need it too, so it's just a super nice flexible card. I really like it. Long Road Home, you can really do whatever you want here. You know, you could Flicker. I mean, there's probably better cards, like the Enchantment one could be better because it's a little bit more flexible, but I liked just the additional synergy of, you know, putting a +1/+1 counter on it, making it a little stronger, could help Ketramose. Charming Prince, one of our classic Flicker cards here. You know, when it enters, you can exile something else until the end of your turn, and then you can scry, gain life. Has a lot of flexibility to it. Velia, Superant Shepherd. This card is so good. You know, you flash it in on the end step of your opponent before you, and then you can start swinging and exiling permanents. They don't even have to be yours. But if they are yours, then you can put +1/+1 counter on Velia so it can get bigger. But you can also just remove blockers. You know, if someone has 2 blockers, you can take one of them away, and then your Ketramose can swing through. So super, super nice. Or you can put them in a hard bind if they have 3, and then just put them in a situation where they have to block with things that they don't want to block with, because Ketramose is indestructible, so you don't really care. Classic things here. We are running Resto and Felidar Guardian. These guys can go infinite with a lot of different things, but especially each other. You know, you can just start flickering each other, and then we do have a mill win condition if you wanted to do that, or they can often do a lot of interesting things together, but they can set up a lot of really just crazy card draw with Ketramose. Even if you're not infinitely going, you can just flicker a huge chain of events and get some crazy stuff there. Teleportation Circle, it's so bright, but just classic. You know, at the end of your turn, you can flicker something. Super good for us. Mirror of Life Trapping. This card is, I pulled it when it came out, and I was like, you know, I don't know if this will ever have a home. And then boom, it has a home here. You know, whenever a creature enters the battlefield, if it was cast, you exile it, and then return all other permanent cards exiled with Mirror of Life Trapping to the under their owner's control. It's really good in ETB decks, just because the creature still enters, and then if it was cast, you get to abuse its ETB twice. So, you know, it's got a home in some stuff, but in here it just has so much of a home because we have a lot of ETBs, and then we also get a lot of value from things being exiled. So Mirror of Life Trapping, super fun, super casual kind of card. I really enjoy it in here. And then we get into we have a lot of removal, exile-based removal. So there's never been a time where I'm playing Ketramose and I've been scared of a specific permanent, just because you have so much utility to that. And then your removal's exile-based. You know, even if someone else gets rid of it and it goes to a graveyard, we're so cool with that because we can get rid of it. And then things like Wonder, you know, all those types of graveyard effects. There's so many decks, at least in my meta, that I'm playing against that just abuse the graveyard consistently. And I love Ketramose because I never have to be afraid of any graveyards going into this ever again. You just always have graveyard hate. But that's not what we're on. Swords to Plowshares, Path to Exile, pretty classic removal when it comes to white exile-based stuff. We are running Abstruse Appropriation. This card's pretty interesting just because it's a little overcosted, I think, for 4. It's a lot to ask, but it can really be flexible for us because it'll exile something, and then you can cast that card as long as it remains in exile. So that can be pretty fun. It can give us some interesting flexibility. Plus, you know, we're not tuning this Ketramose to, like, the 9s. It's definitely really strong, but it's here to just be some fun graveyard annoyance. D-Spark, very classic exile-based removal. Rite of Oblivion, excellent. You know, it's 2 times we can get rid of any non-land permanent, so we can it's just flexible. You know, if someone has something super annoying, get rid of it. Soul Partition, just great. You know, it exiles it and then it makes it cost more, so it really can slow down a player, get their key piece off the board, and it's a non-land permanent, which, you know, lets us be flexible. Winds of Abandon, this card is super, super good. You know, in the early game, you can get rid of something that you need to, but also later on, when everyone already has ramped and the land isn't as important, you can just wipe everybody out of the game and just exile a bunch of things. But it can also help just turn Ketramose on. You know, sometimes it takes a minute to get him there, and it's really nice to be able to start swinging in. Excise the Imperfect. So exile target non-land permanent, and then its controller incubates X. So just lots and lots and lots of removal. Skyclave Apparition, amazing flicker target, also exiles. So you flicker it, you draw, you exile something else, you draw. It's really, really strong. Anguish Unmaking, just another non-land permanent exile removal. Legions to Ashes is a super interesting card here, just because you can exile target non-land permanent, and then you can also all tokens that player controls with the same name as that permanent. So for 3 mana, you can just shut off a token player. You know, I think this one is just so worth 3 mana at sorcery speed because we already want to be exiling on our turn just to draw cards anyway, but the fact that you can just obliterate a token is just so fun and so nice. Solitude, the amount of times Solitude, this one is expensive, but I do think it fits so good into Ketramose just because it's an extra copy of just instant speed exile-based removal. I mean, you could either cast it or you can evoke it. Super, super flexible, and it's saved me a few times. Love that card. Noxious Gearhulk, just an excellent flicker target, and then if they are in the graveyard, that's also good for us. You know, getting them in the graveyard also helps because then we can just exile it from there, and then this also helps with some life gain. Can really be nice, just gaining some life and destroying some problematic permanents for us. Really good. Merciless Eviction. So my playgroup, we don't really enjoy running Farewell that much just because it stalls the game so hard. So I do run Merciless Eviction in its place. I do think in Ketramose that Farewell would probably be a better addition just because the way it plays out. You know, you exile all X thing, and then you can trigger Ketramose that way. But Merciless Eviction fills the same void here without being as crazy. You can just pick artifacts, creatures, enchantments, or planeswalkers, and just get rid of them all. Can be really nice. Blind Obedience, we gotta slow people down. We don't have a ton of creatures, and then this also, the biggest reason I think it's in here though, is for our Extort, just because it really helps just drain of everybody, and then we're really just gaining some, because Ketramose can just start popping off and drawing you a ton of cards, and then draining you a bunch of life. So having these incremental life gain sources is really, really helpful. But speaking of life-draining sources is Meat Hook Massacre 2. Very flex card here. I'm not super sure if I like it or not, but essentially what you do, and why I have it in here, is it kind of is a pseudo-flicker in a way. Whenever a creature you control dies, you can pay 3 life and then return it under your control, right? So that's really nice, and then it also gives incentive to drain your opponents too. Whenever a creature they control dies, they can pay 3 life, and if they don't, you get it. So that can be nice, and then the finality counter can be extra draw too, because then when they die, they're exiled, so it could be really nice. It's just very, very cost. It's definitely our highest costing kind of card. T-Pro, I just like T-Pro. You know, we're a control deck, so we just gotta sometimes just say, I don't want to deal with this. Mesmeric Orb. So this is where you could definitely flex this around. I know a lot of people don't like to play with or play against Mill, and you are a control list, so you're already going to be, you know, policing the table a little bit. So I could understand if you wanted to cut some of these for maybe some like Stitcher Supplier or just some other mill, like self-mill kind of cards, just so you're not, you know, because mill has such a stigma to it. But I don't care. I like Mesmeric Orb, and I want you guys to have graveyards. So Mesmeric Orb is in here to start the graveyard chain, and then people will remove it eventually. And if they don't, that's great for us too, because then we can just start getting rid of problems before they even exist, you know, and exiling them that way. So Mesmeric Orb, amazing. Altar of the Brood. This is in here just because it's fetchable with Urza's Saga, and it also helps to get graveyards going, because nothing sucks more than when you have Ketramose out and then no one is having a huge graveyard, or no one is even like playing. They're playing a bunch of creatures and permanents, and they're just not casting a ton of spells, and you can't get to 7. So we will help them get a graveyard. So Altar of the Brood. It also is a win condition with Felidar and Resto Angel, so that's nice. Sir Conrad. Excellent source. He can mill everybody, and he goes so good with some of our win conditions in the control side of things. So Sir Conrad is definitely just really, really, really good here. Help us get that graveyard. Breach the Multiverse. This is one of the cards where if things aren't going our way and we're having a rough time, Ketramose isn't getting online, if we get to 7 mana, we always have a hope of just casting Breach the Multiverse. It fixes our graveyard problem, it gives us a board state, so it's just a nice catch-up kind of mechanic in the deck, and I like just having it in here, because Breach the Multiverse, I mean, it's turned so many games that I've played, not only for me, but against me, so it's just a really good card. Exsanguinate, it's just a good card for the late game to just gain us some life back and just maybe kill some people. Just flex slot here, you could probably put in another creature, another flicker target, probably up the synergy, but, I just wanted Exsanguinate. It's a fun card. I like it. All right, so we do have some combos. We are Orzhov, and we are a control list, so that means we're going to try and win through these ways. I am running Sensei's Aetherflux, Bolus's Citadel combo for sure. The main reason behind it is I wanted to run Aetherflux Reservoir, because we're going to be casting an exile spell or casting a spell, drawing a card, losing a life. So if we could offset that with Aetherflux Reservoir, then it'd be nice, because then we could just gain life and we're not so worried, and it just can churn through things. So to facilitate that, these two really help us a lot, just by being able to churn through our exile-based removal and our cards, and then you just throw Sensei's in here, because Sensei's is just a powerful card, can really help us, and then when you combine all three, we just have a win condition. I really like this because I think each piece serves its own purpose in Ketramose. So I love combos that serve pieces instead of only being in there to combo out. Same thing with our second big combo in here, which is Bloodchief's Ascension and Mindcrank. So Mindcrank also really works as a non-deterministic combination, really, with Sir Conrad. So as long as people are milling creatures, as long as one of the 3 people mills a creature, then you can deal damage, do it again, do it again, do it again. And then that really helps, do things like that. Just because whenever an opponent loses life, they put that many cards, and then Sir Conrad can trigger and make everybody lose life. But Bloodchief's Ascension and Mindcrank, how that combos out is, at the beginning of each end step, if an opponent lost 2 or more life, put a counter on Bloodchief. And then if there are 3 or more counters on Bloodchief's Ascension, then whenever a card is put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, Bloodchief's Ascension makes them lose 2, you gain 2. So it's also life gain for us, which this card is just excellent for us on its own. But then you combo it with Mind Crank to then, whenever, essentially, if this has 3 counters, whenever an opponent casts a spell and it goes to a graveyard, they lose 2 life, and then Mind Crank triggers. So then they will put 2 more cards in their graveyard. Then you just keep doing it and doing it and doing it, and then it'll mill them out. And probably, I mean, it'll kill them first, but that's how we win in a few different ways. And then we do have just flicker value, you know? Like, you do have some decent creatures. Ketramose can get pretty big. So that's, I think we chip them down, and then we typically just, like, exsanguinate or Gary them at the end, or Massacre Worm. So let's get into lands. We're running Urza Saga. This is amazing in this list. It's, you know, I know it's expensive, but it's just so good. You know, you mainly for the obvious last area where you can either search up one of your 1-mana things like Ghost Vacuum or, you know, Dino DNA. So flexible. Or you can get a Soul Ring and just, you know, classic do that. We're running Pit of Offerings and Bojuka Bog. So these are lands that help Ketramose's game plan. You know, you exile 3 target cards, which is great. And then Bojuka Bog, just classically, you can just exile a whole graveyard and then, you know, get Ketramose online, maybe draw you a card. Felder Profane, just classic, you know, MDFC kind of card. Running Command Tower, Godless Shrine, Tainted Field, Concealed Courtyard, Isolated Chapel, Orzhov Basilica. I'd probably up that count, but I'm still testing this deck a little bit. And then the rest is just basics, you know? Pretty evenly split, leaning more towards white than black, just by a little bit. But the main reason for that is just having the cards, or having the mana for exile-based removal. So, that is Ketramose. I have a really good time piloting this deck. You do get a lot of hate drawn towards you because you do have just so much consistent graveyard hate. It's not like most decks where they have 1 or 2 pieces in the deck. You are pretty adamant on putting things in graveyards, exiling them, or just taking them away from the board. So you do play a lot of control, so just be prepared for that. But, you know, I love control, so it's a fun life to live. You know, be the archenemy, do it. Do it. But anyway, that's really it for this video. If you liked it, you know, comment, like, subscribe, have a good time. I'm always posting these kind of deck techs now that my computer's back and fixed. But yeah, I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!